Before I turn it over to our guests, and thank you all for being here. Cameron Sinclair and Bethany Halbrecht are well known in many circles around the world for their generosity and the giving that they do, their charitable work in a variety of areas. They're brilliant people, caring people. I know Cameron has built dental clinic after the storms in Haiti. He did health facilities in India, Ethiopia, and she has done a variety of things around.
Point of order, Jack. Can you call the meeting to order, please?
Well, now, okay. I'll call the meeting to order at 2:02, 1:02. Sorry. Thank you. And so in any case, they came up to Jerome and really fell in love with our town and wanted to do something up here. And it was interesting visiting with them. And as I learned more, that Cameron's an award winner on TED Talks. She's been on TED Talks, but he's been an award winner there. And they came up with this incredible idea to develop the
point of order. Can you please do the meeting the way it's supposed to be done by the agenda? We need to
join the meeting.
I don't have an agenda in front of me.
Well, you're the mayor, Jack.
I know. I thought this was a special meeting that we were going to discuss this project. Candace, would you?
Yes, excuse me. We have to have the roll call, Jack.
Let's have the roll call. Thank you. I guess I apologize, Sage. I was overwhelmed by all the visitors on the phone today as an open meeting. So let's have a roll call of our council members, please.
Mayor Dillenberg.
Here.
Vice Mayor Worth.
Present.
Ms. Barber.
Present.
Ms. Harvey.
Here.
And Ms. Moore.
I'm here, and I have a question. Was it noted that there could be a quorum of design review or planning and zoning at this meeting as well?
No, it wasn't.
Okay.
However, that's not a legal requirement. It's a
Okay.
courtesy.
Okay, just checking.
Thanks, Jane. And moving right along, should we just, Candace, should we be moving into just a discussion of the project we're here to discuss today?
The next item is the Mexican pool site. Yes.
That's this. Yes, thank you. We've looked at this, and I know Alex and I, a number of us looked at that area and thought, gee whiz, this would be wonderful to bring this area back to life, but to make sure it's done safely and maintaining the integrity of the basketball court and opportunity for Jerome citizens to, have their different events there accordingly. And so when I first heard of the project interest by Cameron and Bethany, it was really amazing and interesting and great possibilities. And let me turn it over. I don't know, John, did you want to say anything before we went further onto this, or can we just turn it over to Cameron to outline the progress of their plan and what they have in mind and the slides that they brought to discuss today?
Just one quick comment, Dr. Mayor, wanted to mention that we have had an opportunity to meet with the applicants. They are in escrow. I'm sure they'll give you a little bit more information about their background. They're one of several people who've been interested in the site. To my knowledge, they're the first ones to actually go into escrow. So we're hopeful that they'll be able to move forward with this project. It is a little bit, there's a little bit of history and a little bit of controversy in this particular area in this project. So I'm really pleased to see that they were willing and open to getting some preliminary comments from the council, and also pleased to see some of our other board members participating as well.
Great, thank you. So Cameron, can I call on you? I don't see any hands up for any questions or comments to tell us what you're thinking, please.
Sure. Thank you so much. And first off, this is amazing. You guys have been able to pull together this meeting. As was mentioned, Bethany and I are really just in escrow, and our hope is to take over the property in the next few weeks. And so we're doing a lot of due diligence, but a brief background. I am a recovering architect and builder, which means I'm happy. And I have spent the last 20 years doing post-conflict, post-disaster reconstruction, as well as historic preservation and community development work around the world. And this is Bethany.
Yes, I'm Bethany, and I have spent the last number of years doing arts programming all around the world. I run a nonprofit called Paint the World, and also do innovation and strategy work on the side as well.
So we've had a shared interest, and I can go through some slides with everybody about our thought process on the Mexican Pool and the Queen Street site, or Rio Street, depending on on how you see the area. You know, it's really important for me. One of the things I learned over the last 20 years is and you'll see this, is that most sustainable building in the world is one that's already built. And that we're going through this phase in architecture and building that, you know, we tear things down, we put up a glass building that is kind of a LEED certified solar roofed building. And actually what you've done is you actually have created more energy and taking away the past and putting in something that may not even be used, right? And in the case of a COVID world, there's all these sustainable office buildings that are empty right now. So is it sustainable? So we're really interested in working on projects that have a civic purpose and can activate and connect communities, but also are in this public-private partnership. And for us, we love Jerome. I love Jerome, and I have to say, it isn't just because Jerome is a magical place. It's because Bethany is a former resident of Arizona.
Yeah, I have always loved Arizona so much. So I have to say that it's because of me that this man is suddenly interested in all things Arizona. I'm very proud of that. I think it's the best state in the country by far. It has everything.
Yeah, and bear in mind, I was buying for Montana, which is where I lived for a number of years. So there's definitely a connection to the Clark family when we talk about the Montana-Arizona connection. Right. So I'm going to just share my screen and just do this, and we can go through some of the things in terms of where we see the partnership with the design review board, as well as planning and zoning, because it's more than just the pool site. It's really about the connection with our neighbors and with, you know, that site is bounded on 3 sides by town-owned property and a right-of-way. So there is a lot of things that interconnect us, and that's why I felt it was deeply important that this is really a co-design, even though we would be acquiring the property. So let me just click share. Oh, I need to be the host, or someone needs to.
I can do that. Before we go there, I just wanted to note, Mayor, that Mandy has her hand up.
Okay, Mandy, yes, please. Sorry. Thank you, Candace. Mandy.
Oh, I'll wait till after Cameron and Bethany's presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay, we can proceed.
I'm getting ready to let him share here.
Thank you.
Okay, you should be able to now, Cameron.
Okay,
Perfect.
So and if you can't see something, let me know. Okay, let's see if I can. Okay, do you see a hello?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, so
hello. I'm Bethany.
And I'm Cameron, and we are co-conspirators and partners, and have been working on this idea of how we can marry sustainability and historic preservation. As noted before, it's been my bread and butter for many years. I've worked from sublime to the ridiculous. So sublime would be restoration, working on restoration plans for the Bamiyan Buddhas in Afghanistan, or working on the Nelson Mandela Robben Island restoration, to the ridiculous, which is working in disaster zones and, you know, post-quake areas around the world. Here in the US, we did a lot of work around poverty alleviation, low-income housing, and then things like Hurricane Katrina and Superstorm Sandy. But the reason why we really love the Mexican Pool project is it kind of plays into where we see our future together, which is looking at that intersection between historic preservation and sustainability. that we can do a very light touch. As the mayor noted, there's been other interest in the pool, and most of the previous people that have been interested in the pool have been thinking about it as a base to put a structure on. We actually want to restore the pool to the original 1928 footprint and look at ways where we can move the kind of history of the pool forward. So the process we usually use is we're identifying neglected and abandoned civic and community structures. We partner with community groups, like, whether it be kind of historic preservation societies, such as, Jerome has probably one of the most famous historic societies because it really helped galvanize the town from the 50s onwards. And then we go out and fund and rehabilitate the thing as a private entity, as a couple, utilizing materials that are appropriate for the project. And then if there's the opportunity, we can expand the project to the partner sites. So in this case, it would be some of the ideas that have been put in place for the parking development that's happening up by the sliding jail and the basketball court. So as you guys know, this is probably the most famous photo of the pool, only because it's the only one we found so far, and it gets printed a lot. We don't just want to renovate and rehabilitate the pool, we want to call Jerome home. We have been very nomadic over the last decade or so.
Just because of the nature of our work.
Yeah, and now we're kind of getting into a different phase where we really realize that in order to make a project really happen and really reflect the core values you want to bring into the project, you have to live there. You can't just like fly in or drive in. And so we really feel a much more hands-on approach, especially, and I'm sure this will come up in discussion, all the issues around soil erosion on that site, because that's a really, really big issue. So in this package, and many of you guys have got the package, it's on the website. We're just really talking about the plan for the pool and then opportunities for the town. It was built in 28 by the mine, and there's some interesting history as to why it was built, as opposed to the reality or the story or the narrative of why it was built. And we're going to really investigate that. There was a lot of actions that happened in 26, 27, 28 around workers' rights, and also supporting different minority groups that were deeply involved in the mining. There has been racial issues around that, and it's something that we're not going to hide. We're going to be very honest about it.
But we understand the importance of framing.
Yeah. So our hope is that we spend the next 2 years really bringing it back to life, because in 2028, well, it will be its 100th anniversary, and we really want to kind of, have it there as it turns its first 100 years. Many of you have probably seen what the site looks like, or have peered over the edge and looked at it. It has soil in the pool right now because of the erosion. The number one thing we really need to do is to protect it. If by protecting the pool, we're protecting the surrounding sites, which means Diaz, Juarez, Queen Rio streets, as well as the utilities that are already in those roads, because if there's further erosion, it's going to erode into town property. So we have a phasing approach that we're going to do. The pump house was partially finished. It was probably about 80% finished, but was not hooked up. We want to at least get that operational, so that will allow us to be able to spend time in restoring and maintaining the engineered retaining wall system. And then we will work towards doing the entire complex before integrating into a master plan, which will probably be led by the town of Jerome. This is just a lot of detail, but I have to say, I have never worked on a project where I've not even gotten to escrow yet, where so many people of the town have been involved in terms of like positively getting us things, everything from like Shepherd Weiser and
We love it. It's been amazing.
it's been really amazing. It's been kind of overwhelming, but amazing. And even talking with the fire chief about making sure that it was listed as 320, but actually it should be 300 because the way that the street is. So even the naming of the numbering system of that road was not right. And so we want to get everything corrected before we get going. We'll do a cultural resource study. I feel it's vitally important. I know that it's kind of advised, but working with SHPO is going to be important for us to make sure that we maintain the integrity of the pool. And then, there are things that we may need from the town. Obviously, an endorsement of the work that we're doing. We do have a letter that that Frank, the current owner, received about waiving hookups, given that the structure was built pre-1950s, and we have a copy of that letter. We're looking for conditional use permit for residency in the C1 area, as well as maybe a permit for building in the AR area. This particular site is very odd. And I'm sure there are a lot of sites in Jerome like this where the zone is split in half. And so actually a lot of the, I'm kind of like the nerd when it comes to building code. I actually read the entire Jerome building code for fun last week. And so I was looking at some.
Bethany, we have to
All
talk.
he talks about, by the way.
Yeah.
He dreams about it. He wakes up talking about it. This is like,
Yeah,
this is Cameron's pride and joy right now.
Yeah.
As it is mine.
Yeah, all I can do is make coffee and talk building codes. But some of those would actually prohibit us from doing work because in order to do a structure, it would have to actually cover the pool, given the size of the lot for the zone for AR, and we absolutely do not want to touch the pool in any sort of way that would stop it. I think we want to retain that original 1928 footprint. And so there are obviously going to be permits around that. In that original photo, there was some lighting. We could have a lot of discussion about community use of that pool. And Bethany has run arts programming for years around the world. And certainly we want to be able to have this as, we're going to do a lot of investigation around liabilities and insurance, but we want to be able to open this up for the community, especially if they, as a result of social distancing, people need to eat, outside and things like that. So,
utilize the space.
So that's really about the pool. I just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about opportunities. One is to restore, which is, ensuring that the property is built to enhance the historic district. And when I say historic district, I'm talking about the Queen Street district, the area around the Cuban Queen and all the properties around there from the sliding jail. It's really underutilized as a property, but it's like a gem and I think because a lot of people don't realize they can just park down there. It's really kind of locals parking, that it doesn't get the traffic that it probably could get. So we could unify that by kind of co-developing a plan with the entire team, where it's P&Z, DRB, and the town on that enhanced parking area and landscaping. We can also look at expanding and creating a district. This is like, now we're getting into fantasy land, but think big. But the idea that we would work with, I see that Wendy is on the call and Wendy is on the call, the two, Wendy and Wendy, who are also property owners on that Queen Street area. We could look at correcting a lot of things that are causing the hurdles to allow that to become a unified area. Because, for instance, Juarez Diaz doesn't really, nobody knows where it really ends. Conglomerate's missing. Rio is now Queen, but the 5 points that were originally there for that district because of erosion are now disconnected. And then because of the zoning between AR and C1, you end up having a split in use, whereas if it was all C1, then you would have a unified district. And then finally, representatives from Verde Extension actually came to us, they're lawyers, and started talking about the original 1928 housing plans that were developed by Senator Clark that was actually intended for worker housing for the Hispanic community around the pool. And he actually is sending us the original plans and drawings that were done in 1928, 29, so that we can just have a look at them. And these are kind of small homes that were kind of designed specifically. And the idea was, and I didn't know this until, you know, we did a lot of investigation, is that the pool site was really just the beginning of what should have been a larger community center. They had plans for like bowling. I don't know what it is with Jerome and bowling alleys, but apparently there was a lot of bowling alleys that happened in Jerome. But there was supposed to be a bowling alley and all sorts of community centers and a drop-in center. And then there would be worker housing that would kind of go around it. And so, you know, it's not like, you know, it's, you know, new ideas are, you know, I think it was the Jane Jacobs phrase I said in there, like old buildings create new ideas. So all the talk about worker housing in Jerome actually was talked about in 1928. This is not us. This is the team, many of whom are on the call, that have been working on how the site would work. You know, the goose next door, ourselves, and Windy, of course, would be affected by all of this construction that would happen. But I think, you know, working in concert together, we could probably get something that would work. And you know, as we're totally excited and about any development. We're just worried about, you know, volleyballs and basketballs falling into our swimming pool. But you know, we're just gonna have to get really good at sports. So finally, Rusty Blair, as I mentioned, had noted that it's actually 300 Queen Street, not 320. So we're actually in the process of ensuring that that is listed as that. And I really want to thank everyone who's been involved in that process. The idea of a rezoning is going to take some time. You know, our neighbor property is the town's property, like I said. But you have essentially 5 small sites that are AR, and if those turn into C1, then you have a C1 district, right? So that could take time, and we're okay with that. If you guys don't want to do it, that's fine by us too. I mean, we'll end up with a split lot, but we just thought that for the town, it might be better. So our next steps is to reconcile the topographical survey that Frank did with the town survey. There's a few feet difference. So, you know, there's a discrepancy, and it's just the realities of doing survey work. We need utilities approval. And the reason we wanted the hookups is really so that we can ensure that we can do the restoration and the rebuilding of the retaining wall system. We have to close on the property. We would implement a cultural resource study. We can even do it now, we don't mind. And then run a design sprint so we want to have community participation in this process. You know, we believe in a kind of civic partnership, and then, you know, the rehabilitation, and then eventually design workshop. So that's kind of where we are. I want to say thank you to everybody. Oh, I actually, sorry, I was working on making this look nicer. So I wanted to end this way. First of all, this is everybody who has already been involved. And like I say, we went into escrow like 2 weeks ago. So it's been pretty amazing. In the town plan of the 2018 plan, this was the phrase that was used in the title of the plan. I thought it kind of reflected most the pool. So I have auxiliary images and stuff, but this was my rant and ramble. And believe me, Bethany would have said it in a much nicer way and with a lot more giggles and smiles. But I just wanted to get through it. So are there thoughts?
Yeah, I know, man. Thank you so much, Karen. Wonderful. I'm just so excited. And let me hear from my colleagues. I guess, Mandy, did you want to, you had your hand up, and I see Sage as well. And right. So let's, Mandy, you had your hand up from earlier. You're on mute. Did you want to say anything or comment?
Thank you, Dr. Mayer. I first off I just have to say how cool it is to be on a call with Cameron Sinclair. I've been paying attention to Architecture for Humanity and Armory for Harmony for several years since seeing you on Iconoclasts. So this is just a super treat for me. I am so grateful that someone is looking at this property as both a community involvement, a housing thing, sustainability, and understands kind of the weirdness of being on a fault line. And I would like to know if there's anything else that we can do to help, and then also see where maybe the other concerns might be from fellow council members so that we can address those and hopefully be able to move forward with this project. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
Mandy. Let me get the Sage and then we'll get to Bryce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Lower my hand so you don't think I have it up again. So I actually spent 3 days on this. I have a handful of things to bring up. First off, in the general plan, page 25, land use goals, policies, and strategies. Goal 1B, develop land use patterns which aid in protecting life and property against the threatened effects of natural disasters. The last line of that goal 1B is to identify areas that are prone to landslides and seismic activity. This is a rapid slide zone in a fault. This has been identified in the 2005 Geology and Landslide Activity on Arizona SR 89A in Jerome, Arizona study. On the third page, last paragraph after figures 3 and 4, it states, the first sign of instability was reported in 1898 with subsequent events in 1903, 1912, 1913, 1914, and 1916. In 1924, appreciable ground movement reoccurred in this area, increasing horizontal and vertical movements continued until 1937. At that time, a 3-acre section of the downtown Jerome area had been deemed structurally unsound. Instability in the area continued well into the 40s. Also on page 4, figure 9 from the Lindbergh 2002 study, which shows a map of the historic landslide areas of Jerome. We all know that this area slid again in 2015. This is not just erosion. It is like a water slide underneath there. It is on a fault zone and it is not stable ground, and we would be negligible to allow someone to build homes on it. Second, the zoning ordinance, section 502, general provisions. F, site unsuitability. No land shall be used or structure erected where the land is held by the commission to be unsuitable for such use or structure by reason of flooding, concentrated runoff, inadequate drainage, adverse soil or rock formation, extreme topography, low percolation rate or bearing strength, erosion susceptibility, or any other features likely to be harmful to the health, safety, and general welfare of our community. That is just in reference to that property and what actually it is. In our general plan and our zoning ordinance, it tells us that we need to identify these things and not allow building on them. In reference to the pool and the waived hookup fees, I understand that the zoning ordinance was read, but the definitions apparently were not. The definition of a structure, if you read the definition of a structure, actually, let me start. Town Code, Chapter 13, Water. Section 13.2.2, grounds for rejection of application. The town may reject any application for water service for any good and sufficient reasons, including the following: service not available under a standard rate, service which involves excessive service expense, service which may affect the service to other consumers. A, in section 13.5.1, under the water rates, section A through E, the pool is not listed in any of those rates, so there's no pool listed. Section 13.1B, second page after rates, the definition of structure. For the purpose of this section, structure shall mean a building such as a house, barn, shed, church, hotel, or similar construction, which was created principally to shelter any form of human activity. If a structure has lost any of its basic structural elements, such as its roof, it is considered a ruin and not a structure for the purpose of this section. In order to be eligible for reduced rates based on the age of the structure, the property owner must demonstrate to the town manager the age of any structure which property owner claims was constructed prior to 1980 with the submission of reliable and definitive documentation such as a building permit, real property tax assessments, and or dated photography. So just, and then my concerns in reference to, that's just the safety issues. And I just wanted to let them know that they do not, in fact, according to definition, qualify for the waiver of fees for hookups. And I did want to mention that I made sure that everybody had a copy of the map of all the town properties that surround this property. And in reference to the public-private partnership and building an expanded community center and housing on city-owned lots that surround the Mexican pool, Jerome already has infrastructure problems that we cannot address financially. We should not be utilizing any monies that are already desperately needed for the current infrastructure to build additional infrastructure and housing on unstable ground. The GIS map of town-owned properties around the pool property show that there is nowhere we can build homes as lots are too small, already used, or in the immediate slide zone area. And I will shut up with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sage. Bryce?
Yeah, thank you, Sage. I've got a number of things to say also. And I want to talk about how this report came to be written, which is the geology and landslide activity, which was presented on May 2005. Now, in the early aughts, the highway department had some extra funds, they thought, that they could invest in Jerome. And a good idea would be a visitor center. And it was to be a restrooms and a meeting hall and a retail facility. And it was to be very close to where this project is. Okay. Now, I was on design review at the time. And by the way, it's design review board. It's, and some people misname it as design and review. Design review does not design. We review designs, and we've never done a cooperative project with a citizen that I recall. But anyway, to get back to the visitor center, it disappeared without a ripple, as far as I could tell. We approved the thing, the funding was there, and suddenly it was simply gone. And it was to mean local jobs and local work and development of a place that had been neglected. Well, it turns out that they commissioned a geology report to see how suitable this play area is for building. And they were not willing to take a chance on it. And here's why. You have to read this thing maybe to understand this. And I am not a geologist. However, I went to Cooper Union as an art student. Now, when downtown got collapsed, they didn't pick it up and take it away. They simply kept putting more stuff on top of that. Okay. The geology study made 2 probe holes. Are you, let me ask you this. Are you aware of this work that had been done, Cameron? Are you?
Yes, and I read the report.
So you know how it was done. That they took more samples and they found that not only was there this debris layer, but under that there was a layer of trees. They had knocked out all the trees before putting the next layer on. But the really consequential thing from a geologist's point of view apparently is under that is clay. And the clay gets wet and slippery. And that is why the maps in here indicate this area as a slide zone and also and this doesn't show up very often, as a zone of subsidence. These are very serious issues to my mind. Maybe you can do some due diligence that somehow gets around that. But I do have another question for you, Cap. I looked at your resume. What social innovations at Airbnb did you lead?
Okay, so three things. So on the slide report, we read the slide report, and the site, the actual physical site of the lot is just to the left of the rapid slide. The rapid slide is on the phone slide. We can go into that and I can do some review. On the Airbnb side, what I did was I led refugee housing. We housed around about 40,000 people that were displaced through natural disasters, wildfires. And then I worked on rural revitalization in a couple of towns. It was not part of the for-profit company. It was part of the philanthropic nonprofit.
I wasn't aware that there was such a thing. Are
Well,
you aware of the history here in town of the B&B controversy?
Yeah, and as a result of working on the philanthropic side of the company, and I lived in Sausalito for many years, so almost every neighbor I have accused me of ruining their backyard.
But we came to a vote here in town, and what was the percentage?
The vote was basically 95%.
95% did not want B&Bs here. And we wanted to enforce our zoning laws, which would have precluded such movement. However, the Republicans in Phoenix decided to take it into their own hands and disregard what the local people here wanted. So that's why we have the rules we have today.
Yeah. Well, you know, I have a feeling that my history working for Airbnb could be as questioned as my history working for humanitarian organizations or for past governments or, you know, past celebrities. So like, you know, there's lots of things to talk about in terms of that, but I'm more than happy to answer questions about the positive and negative sides of short-term rentals and what towns need to do in order to enforce the regulations and the taxes that they should actually get from short-term rentals. So,
okay, got a question, another question for you, please. What public-private partnerships are you working on, or what is in your resume of public-private partnerships?
There's been well, there's a lot. I mean, currently it's everything from working with the port in Cape Town on the Nelson Mandela Foundation and Robben Island as a large-scale project. Small-scale projects have been everything from working with youth organizations that have got private homes that are being renovated for public use. And then throughout my history, I mean, the nonprofit I ran, we had 70,000 volunteers, about 150 staff, and we're working in 50 countries. So we were doing about 40 to 50 projects a year. So there's been a lot of projects I've worked on, but this is a personal project. I'm investing we are investing our own funds into it. None of this is public funds. It's all of our, basically my life savings.
It looks like, it sounds though, when you spell it out, that you want to move into the pool house. Is that a correct assumption?
We would like to at least have a residence there on site. The real question, and we've talked to Rusty about whether the pool constitutes too much water usage, and as a result, we'll have to look at how water is used there. We haven't made a decision on whether the pool is operable. We wanted it to have a
pool house, please, not the pool.
Yeah, the pool house. Yeah.
You wish to live in the pool house.
Yeah.
Thank you, Bryce. I see Alex has her hand up. Alex?
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I wanted to clarify a little bit of what you had said at the beginning, Jack. I attended one meeting on site with you, John Knight, and Cameron. To clarify what I had said, I did not give an opinion on my disapproval or my approval I had pointed out the geology and landslide activity that Cameron obviously had read and understands, that Sage read from. So I want to make an opinion now that I think it sounds very exciting to have a pool, to have the Mexican pool revamped and reused. I, however, do have issues with my opinion on the stability of the area in question. So to put that much water in that structure where it is, I don't know if that's a good idea. Now, I do have a question for Cameron, because in the proposal that we're looking at, he talked about putting a retaining wall from where the parking lot is up above.
Yeah.
Is there going to be talk of putting in a huge retaining wall down below to try to hold up the whole space? And again, where I'm going with that is if you look at how that little piece of land is still sticking on there from where the landslide came in and took everything away, that piece sticks out, the landslide area goes in. I just don't want to jeopardize making it too heavy, not engineering it correct.
Yeah.
I think the pool renovation sounds wonderful. I just think that we really, really all need to think about the safety of this project. To put that much water
Absolutely.
in the pool hanging off the edge doesn't sound feasible without an amazing retaining wall down below to hold it up.
Yeah, Alex, you're 100% on. And when we even thought about taking on this project, we knew we needed to set aside somewhere between $30,000 to $40,000 just in retaining systems, both for, and we'd have to work with Verde because they obviously own some of the site where some of that retaining may have to happen. But the site that goes up against Queen Street, there was an existing retaining wall from the 1930s, late 1920s. We would have to do something that's very robust. You know, we know that we'll probably spend more on the retaining and engineering than we will anything else by far. And, you know, we are going to take that on personally. You know, we will bring in the engineers that we need to do, as well as the construction teams that are used to working on that. What I would like to ensure, which is I'm giving myself or giving us more work, is I actually want to ensure that the design review board and planning and zoning are part of that design process, because if it's a sizable wall, it's going to be an impact on the visual aspect of that part of town. So, you know, the reason we wanted to start early with this process is we know it's going to take us some time to ensure that what we're doing not only is structurally sound and safe, which I've done a couple of projects like this that have sizable engineering, but we want to make sure that there's an aesthetic level that is acceptable, if not kind of like conducive to that part of town.
Thank you, Cameron. Is there another hand up anywhere I don't see?
One more point I wanted to make. Which
Yes, please, Cameron.
So the filling the pool with water bit. So, you know, that is still on the cards. We have not really talked about whether we're going to have an operable pool or not. That we want to investigate that. But the one element of it that we were thinking of is that it actually acts as a fire suppression issue in wildfires, because at least where we are, I'll let you see the view. Where we are in Topanga, which is up here, if you have a pool over a certain elevation, you are legally required to allow the fire teams to take water from your pool for any fire suppression issues. So I don't know what the rule is in kind of Prescott, Cottonwood, Jerome, but you know, one element we thought is if it's a civic pool, then you should have the right to use the pool water when you want to put out a fire. So, but if it does turn out that through the engineering process, that the weight of the water plus the pool causes any issue further down the hill, we will have to decide whether we put in a retaining system there or whether we just don't fill it. And that's, you know, that's not the make or break with us with getting this property.
Great. And I'm missing anyone who hasn't spoken yet?
Alex and Bryce still have their hands up.
Alex, I see has a.
And Jane.
And Jane.
I did not put my hand down. I will make sure that I do that. Thank you for the clarification, Cameron.
Great. Okay, now well, we had Bryce
Bryce still has his hand up, and Jane has her hand up,
Yeah, let me get to Jane and then I'll get back to Bryce.
and there's also someone called iPhone that has a hand up. I'm not sure.
That's an interesting name. Jane, let's, please.
I can wait if other people have a burning desire to talk first.
Okay, well, I don't know. I guess
I'm
Bryce.
interested in hearing what everyone has to say.
Sure, the Woods.
I think Carol has a question.
Carol has a question.
Okay, Cameron and Bethany, very interesting presentation, thorough, thank you. My question has to do with when we built our house here, the amount that you just stated for retention, 30 to 40,000, was what we did on a 1,500 square foot house. So it just seems very lowballed from my point of view of having built a house.
And that was a while ago.
And that was a while ago. That was a long while ago, 30 years ago. So, and then something that Sage said, my second half of what I have to say, has to do with our definitions and charges for water, sewer, and sanitation, not addressing something like a pool, which right now we have residential water as one price for the people who live here. And then there's commercial prices. So that's more a question for the town than it is for Cameron or Bethany. But I am curious about retention of 30 or 40,000. It seems very low.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Carol, thank you so
Okay,
much.
and then iPhone, Cameron, did you want to respond to anything on that?
Carol, thank you for that. When I was talking about the $30,000 to $40,000, that's just for the wall, not for any of the housing. Like, you know, the footprint of that property for shelter is a 14 by 14 and a 12 by 24 unit. So, you know, the houses themselves are going to be very small. For those who don't know, we both live in a very small house in Topanga right now, which is
Very familiar with Topanga, trust me.
Yeah. They've got a tiny house up there that's really
we're
pretty.
200 square feet up here. And so, you know, there'll be more money set aside for renovation and work on the pool and the house, but this is just for the engineering and for the work on the wall system, whether it's gabion, concrete, you know, whatever material we do, we want to have a material that reflects what with Jerome. And it may be more, it may be less, but you know, we know that we need to set aside a minimum of 30 to 40K just for the wall.
Thank you. I see Sage has her hand up again, and then the iPhone person. Sage, how about if I get you first? Is that all right? And then we'll go to the iPhone.
What about Jane? I would actually.
Jane,
Jane
we'll go to Wade.
has to
Jane,
say.
Jane.
And
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Sage. Jane, why don't you hop in?
Okay, I may have more to say after I listen to other people too. Yeah, I agree. The retaining walls, I know of a couple of large retaining walls that were built not that long ago, and anywhere from 50,000 to hundreds of thousands of dollars for comparable retaining walls. And not one was a gabion, and that was $60,000, I believe. And much smaller than these would need to be.
Yeah, this is Natalie. Why the fuck you calling me?
What?
Who are you?
John, mute Natalie.
Oh, sorry, I don't know who that is. Who's talking? Jane, you want to continue, please?
Sure. Anyway, retaining walls are quite costly. A concrete retaining wall in my neighborhood, I know, was hundreds of thousands of dollars, and probably also not as big as these might need to be. I am extremely concerned about this area being in the slide zone, as well as the property above with the sliding jail, having all who knows what dumped on it for so many years, never compacted. And being that that's our town property above this property, of course, I would be concerned about our liability, the town's liability. The pool being built in 1928, the cement probably has no rebar or anything like that in it. Also wondering about core samples on this particular property and what could be underneath that pool. It's possible soils have moved underneath it, and it seems like a lot of work would be needed to go into this before putting water in something like this, that it may need to be reinforced as well, and the cost of that. And as Alex mentioned, that's a huge load with the water, so retaining wall below. I'm just really concerned, knowing the geology of the area. And also this pool was only in operation for a few years because the slides started happening in the 30s and it was built in 1928. We don't really know how many years, and less than 10 years that it was in operation. And so therefore it doesn't really have a history of long-term use to see what might happen with it. There's a lot of geological study that would need to go into this area. The access to this area is another issue, Diaz Street. And I don't know that anyone that lives in the Diaz Street area, I have no idea how they would feel about rezoning that area and access coming in through Diaz. That remains to be seen. I did want to say I'm impressed with both of your backgrounds. And I think that, you know, you've done a lot of good projects, both of you. And so I'm hoping that we can get some more geology study done on this area, because I'm so uncomfortable with any major building projects on this property.
Thank you.
I can't stress that enough, because we haven't had any heavy rains since the work was done on the sliding jail parking area. And this whole area, as has been said over and over, is a dangerous slide zone and does move. There have been seeps. The research, geology research, dates back to the 1890s about movement in this area, and it's never really stopped. And there are seeps that have opened up below, in between this area and the Powder Box Church, and do when we have heavy rains. So we know that water does move underneath this area, and probably still will. So I hope that whatever happens here, that you're willing to move slowly on this if you decide to continue.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah, no,
I don't
good
want
points, Jen.
to start a project here that we find out later this isn't going to work.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And
no, and I
that's it
appreciate
for
that,
now.
Jane. And I think, you know, one of the things I think we're learning is the experience that Cameron has over the years, and their commitment to doing it safely and so on. But you raise good points, and it's going to require a real thorough engineering, geological, to make sure that it is safe, and that the good news, I think, is the people that are applying to do this, it is, you know, it's a very different type of person than one would expect just buying a house or buying property to develop in a town. So, but you're absolutely right. These are issues that need to be addressed, and we need to be concerned about the safety and make sure that they're aware. And I'm just glad from the things I'm hearing from them that they're doing their homework, they're learning the issues, and hopefully, as we'll see how this proceeds, just continue to do the right thing in the big
I wanted to
picture.
respond to Jane just
Yes,
quick.
Cameron, yes, please.
really good point. And just some information that was in the document, but I didn't really go into detail. In the appendix, it talks about in 2018, Frank had commissioned a soil report, 50-page soil report, because there was an intention to build a 2-story commercial and residential building on top of the pool. And so that they needed to ensure that they could actually do that. That project didn't go forward. And so, you know, our intention is actually not to put any physical structure on top of the pool, which would have, the weight of that itself would have far excelled any water that's in the pool. So, you know, I think it's, I'll be more than happy to share that soil report. We definitely need to do a lot more geology studies and some engineering. And I'm more than happy to work with folks even on surrounding properties who are also equally looking to ensure that there's stability for their property. Because all along Diaz, Juarez, a lot of that property is needs to have a similar amount of work done. And I know that Wendy is working extremely hard on the Cuban Queen to make sure that that gets built correctly too. So
Windy.
Wendy. Yeah. Thank you. Was there another hand up there somewhere that I didn't see?
Sage and Bryce.
Sage and Bryce again. Okay, thank you. Sage, please.
Thank you, Jack. I did yield my last hand to Jane.
Oh, sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
A couple of things. I have that soil report in front of me that he was referring to, Appendix E. And if you read, it goes all the way down to 10 feet, and it all is the same definition as what they give you in the soil report from 2005. This report that everybody got as an addendum, the geology, it's the same soil, and every single one of them, all the way down to 10 feet, says that it is damp, which means there's seepage and there's water flowing through there all the time. It's the only way that salt cedars can grow. They take 200 gallons per day per tree.
Wow.
So second, I wanted to mention that I did talk to Rusty Blair, and for water fires, the water out of that pool would not really be feasible fire suppression. In order for us to use it, we would have to either have someone stand at the top of that and drop hoses down to Douglas so that they could get that water, or they would have to hike them up. I don't think it would be enough water for it to make a difference, really. My other concern would be, has anybody asked Marty, who is our public works director, how a pump for a swimming pool might affect our infrastructure in that area? I know our infrastructure is extremely old. A lot of the joints in that area in our infrastructure are not solid, they're not strong. I know we've been working on it for a long time, but they do break on a regular basis. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see the iPhone. Is that Margie?
It's Margie and Bryce.
Okay, let's get Margie, if you have a question or a comment.
Yes, I do. Thank you. My name's Margie Hardy. I've been a resident in Jerome for 35 years. And I have a number of just a couple of questions and comments. First of all, I moved here to Jerome for the way Jerome is. It was then and pretty much is the same as it is now. I didn't come here to change it. And pardon me. And also, I want to say that I'm curious to see how much money the town would actually have to put out in case of this project going ahead, because right now we're in very critical situation as far as our infrastructure, our sewers, our waters. Center Street, where I live in that area, has been promised to be redone for approximately 10 years, but it can never get done because the sewer's shot underneath. And my point being, just like if you were going to redo your home, you got to fix the basics first. And the basics in Jerome are all connected. They're all interconnected. And that would include creating a whole new set of problems with a community development. I beg your pardon. I meant a like a planned development, which is what I see this as, a planned development. So I'm curious also as to, like I said, would the town be required to put out money? I'm a taxpayer. Would the town have to pay something towards this development as a partnership? The general plan asks us, and this was passed by Frank Vanderhorst and the other council. It asks us to not develop housing in the C1 zone. Keep housing in the residential neighborhoods, keep C1 to commercial. And yes, we do have a certain amount of infill available, which could be used for housing, which is why we have a conditional use in the C1 zone. We don't want to develop housing in the C1 zone. Or at least that's what the general plan says. I also want to say that Jerome, unlike the other projects which I heard referenced, is not a humanitarian effort. We are not.
Well, it depends who you ask.
Pardon me?
No, I'm okay. Go ahead.
Did you say we were?
No.
No, we're not. We're all here because we want to be here and not because we're suffering and we need help. And that's all I've got. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you, Mark. I mean, Bryce, did you still have a question or a
No, I
comment?
don't.
I'll
Thank
get
you
back.
very much. It was nice to meet you folks. I'm sorry about the pandemic. I would like to sit down and meet you face to face. You seem like
Thank
very
you.
nice folks.
Thank you so much. Regards to both of you. Thank you. Thanks, Carol. And I see Alex has her hand up.
I am unmuted now. Can you hear me again?
Yes. Yes, Alex. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes. It's a little breaking up, but we can hear you.
I wanted to point out a bit about our infrastructure. Yeah, you can hear me?
Alex,
I just
you might
wanted to
wanna-
point out a little bit about our infrastructure.
You're breaking up, Councilmember Barber. If you could turn off your video, there you go.
Okay, I'm gonna turn my video off. Is that better?
Yes.
Much better.
Okay. I wanted to bring up sewer problems, water problems that we have been having. I also have a paper in my hand that is from Marty Boland. This is February 12th, 2019, infrastructure issues. We had talked about sewer problems, Holly Avenue, First Street, 4th Street, Boardwalk, Gulch sewer lines. We have been having issues with sewer lines. Candace could elaborate a little bit more on that. We also talk about water issues in this in 2009. Holly Avenue, First Avenue, general issues. Margie had brought up fixing lines down in the Verde Street, 1st through 4th areas. It seems that now that we have a full crew, we might be a little better suited to deal with going forward rather than just patching issues. Because if anyone has driven around uptown today or in the last couple weeks, we have noticed our guys in manholes. Today, when I went uptown, I noticed down by La Victoria and over by the parking pad, right in front of the area that we're talking about, in front of the Cuban Queen. They had the ground ripped open there. Candace could elaborate on what they're doing. I do not know. So we are a town with limited funding. We are a town that was built before turn of the century plumbing. No one has brought up the issue yet in our talks today about how when the big slide happened, it just crushed all the infrastructure, all the water pipes, all the sewer pipes. That is what is my hypothesis of why it is wet down in there. So have we been able to isolate those and cap them off? We try to go forward with projects, and our town crew did a great job in the last 2 years on trying to get our list of projects completed. They did a wonderful job. But again, they get taken off of going forward with trying to fix up our antique infrastructure with problems, crisis. We have also talked in open meetings and had field trips with the whole council on what we're going to do about our sewer plant.
No kidding.
I just wanted to bring up the issues of, I think that this is a project that sounds wonderful. There's just a lot of issues to deal with trying to go forward.
Thank you, Alice.
Candace, can you elaborate on what's going on down there today in front of the Cuban Queen? Do you have any idea why the guys have the ground open again?
There was a sewer leak down there, a problem with the sewer line. There's been several of those lately in that general area.
There has been. And again, hopefully we can, once COVID calms down a little bit, generate our funding once everything opens again to have enough money to continue to fix our antique infrastructure. And that was just kind of a segue on what Margie had talked about, what they want as far as the town partnership. Again, I am not expressing opinion that I'm against it. I think it sounds amazing. There's just lots of issues. And again, safety is the number one thing for everyone concerned. Thank you.
Alex. Thank you so much, Alex. Candace, any other hands around?
Yes, you have, it looks like Margie still has her hand up and Bryce, and I don't know if it's from before.
No, that's still up there.
And Cameron has his hand up.
Okay, let's get Cameron then, please.
Sorry, I'm very English. I actually put my hand up, Rob.
That's all right. No, it's good.
I wanted to respond to Margie as well, because she had lots of great points. You know, the history of infrastructure funding in Jerome has not been as fluid as most towns. It's just the reality of a small town. One thing to note, this is in terms of development, this is an 80-foot by 140-foot private lot, right? It's not, you know, we are offering to partner with the city to work with the city on some of the city issues. And so we're literally becoming new residents of Jerome. And so, you know, while my background is that of humanitarian work over the last 20, 30 years, you know, we are hoping to become residents of Jerome, the two of us, right? So that's definitely not a humanitarian act. That's one out of
well, we need.
But I think it's important for everybody on the call to know is we are funding everything, right? We're not asking the town for any money. We're not asking, you know, if there's any infrastructure improvements that need to happen because the town needs to improve them, and John Knight and others and Marty can certainly talk about those. That's not because of this project. It may be, you know, as a result of the fact that Rio Street only has, you know, a half-inch water line, right? And so, or its sewer system may be, you know, prehistoric, you know, and so, you know, what I don't want to do is to confuse the two things, that the pool property, which is very tiny, and a very small part of the area, we are taking on the burden of the financial resources to actually do the structural safety. That actually is going to protect the Guth property. It's going to protect the town property, which happens to be on the mine side of the Guth property, as well as the parking area. And you know, when we talk about concern about rapid slide, bear in mind that while we're doing a very discrete, small intervention and doing historic preservation, the major construction that's going to happen in that part of town is going to be the reformatting of the parking and the sports ground. That has nothing to do with us. They happen to be our neighbors. And so, you know, if anything, we should be the ones who will be airing concern that all this construction work is going to exacerbate any slide onto what will be our property. We just want to make sure that we're willing to invest our personal funds, like my, you know, the money that I've made over the last, I won't tell you how old I am, but I am a lot older than I look. That, you know,
don't let Bethany know.
Yeah. Jack, keep it between us. But you know, this is really just, you know, like somebody buying a piece of property in Jerome and wanting to become residents, right? And but we want to make sure that we do something that is civic minded, because I think, you know, if we went in there and we bought that property and we just ripped out the pool and we put up a 2-story house, which we would have the right to do, it would block the view of the valley. It would really be a negative impact, I believe, on the downtown of Jerome, because all of that view, the visual connection with the museum and with the mine would be eradicated. So for me, the win is the fact that we're not building something robust, but we're trying to spend all of our money on the protection of that land. So
Thank you. Awesome. I'm excited about the potential. I think everyone raised some very good points. There are issues here. You know it, better than all of us, probably just with your 20, 30 years experience around the world doing projects like this. But I'm just excited to have someone go in there and not just be an individual saying, oh, I want to buy a house, put a property there, and you know what I mean? And maybe invest, try to do an Airbnb, blah, 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 all the nonsense that we don't like, but rather someone who has a wealth of experience, loves the town, wants to live here and be part of the community, I think is what makes this opportunity special. Clearly, there's going to be more discussion. We got to work through the devil's in the details, but I think that's just a matter of going forward with that and recognizing that this is an opportunity. I think everyone, Sage, Margie, everybody raised good points. I see Margie's got a hand up again. We're in trouble. So hold on.
As does Jane.
And as does Jane. Okay, I didn't see Jane's hand up yet. Jane, do you want to go next or do you want to wait a little bit? Jane?
I'd like to go ahead if I may.
Yes, please. You may, of course.
Okay. I'm wondering, and I can't find in the packet here, you say you would like to provide other housing besides your own on this property, and part of this is let's see.
Actually, I was just highlighting the fact.
The integration into a larger master plan. So I guess what I would be asking, so if the rezoning, the change in zoning that would allow you to do these other things besides providing housing for yourself, if that did not come to fruition, would this be something you'd say, well, I guess I'm not interested in this property then? Or because, by saying, I'm interested in seeing what you want to do here, but that you may not be able to do everything you're wanting to do here, is that something that's going to stop you from wanting to have this property or build on this property?
No, we just want to be two new residents of Jerome. The extra housing really came about as we began to investigate the history of Mexican Town and the area, that there had been pre-existing plans. To be honest, Bethany and I would really love it with no neighbors, because we'll get like 360 degrees.
You got frozen there.
We did, or like we would love it with no neighbors, because then we get a great view, right? But we know that the town is suffering from a lack of worker housing. And so we're just saying that if the town wanted to do the housing, we're not going to object, right? Because it's not our homes. It's going to be other people, right? We don't want to do anything else. We have enough, we have enough issues, and Sage is 100% right, because she's read as many things as I have about the soil issues. And, so I neither have the time or money to build all the worker housing for Jerome, but I just wanted to say, like, look, we don't know what the town's master plan is, right? It could be more parking, it could be more sports facilities, it could be worker housing. Whatever the plan is, we're willing to adapt so that it doesn't look like a weird smashing together of public and private, that we actually have walkways and pedestrian walkways so that people can actually get to where they need to get to. So we're just open to it. I certainly don't have the money or resources to build more housing than, just the original footprint.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I may, the plans that are from the 20s for that area for workforce housing, that was also done before this major slide happened. So I can't imagine that that project would have gone forward, seeing that the that all those houses were planned in that area prior to what happened to that area.
Thank you, Jane. I see Mandy has her hand up. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. I think that all of the concerns that have been brought up are definitely valid. I mean, that is a slide zone. There are issues down there for sure. But I also think that with, number one, you know, creative people are always welcome in Jerome. And I think that's great that this is the place that Cameron and Bethany want to make their home. But also with the background having built all over the world in weird, interesting, strange, unique, difficult locations, and recognizing that there's a lot of due diligence that needs to be done to determine what is the safe usefulness of the parcel. I think that Cameron is well positioned to manage a lot of that. And I just want to make sure that we're being as encouraging as we can in light of the fact that we all recognize, including he and Bethany, that there are concerns and there are things that are going to need to be overcome to make it as useful as possible.
Thanks, man. Well said.
I would like to see this move in a positive direction while we recognize those issues. Thank you.
Well said. Thanks, Vice Mayor. I appreciate that. Now I see Alex, and then we'll get over to Margie. And Alex, is your hand up fresh, or has it been up? Is that?
It is. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
I wanted to thank Cameron and Bethany because I know at the first meeting I had talked about Frank's proposition to build, well, maybe not at the first meeting, talked about Frank's proposition to build, but talked about the historic pool and that it would be very sad to see someone build on top of it. So thank you for proposing to save the historic pool and working with SHPO, because this is something I think everyone in town is very, very happy about. I know that I had worked to try to figure out how the town and the Historical Society behind the scenes could purchase this property so we could save it as a historic relic. Right. The other thing that I think no one has actually said, but I think it's been insinuated around, that the old sliding jail property there, if there's too much movement, you know, at any moment with a gust of wind or the right rain, we could lose our sliding jail. So to have historic properties like the sliding jail and the old historic pool not get covered up with the house sounds very, very exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Appreciate your comments on that. Now, Margie, did you have a brief question or comment?
I do. Pardon me. I was just wondering, in the packet, I didn't see, it was mentioned, but I didn't see the letter from the Planning and Zoning Department regarding the free hookups. And I was wondering how significant that is to this project. And I'm sure they can't answer that question, but I thought I would bring it up because I've been on P&Z, as you all know, forever, and over the years, situations have occurred where, and I'm not saying that this is that situation, where previous commitments and current commitments have resulted in people assuming, and then it turns into a back and forth, and it's hard on the town. And I just worry sometimes when people reference old documents from people who used to live here, and that's a comment. It's not a question.
No,
thank
you so much. You know, and the good news is, from my perspective, Cameron, they both have reached out with John Knight, asking questions, doing things, and you know, I think it's all above board and open, and it's going to go through a process as we move forward, as more things facts come surface, you know, like Alex and Sage and Jane have mentioned, that we'll just have to keep the dialogue going. And I think, Cameron, they're going to do work on their property, and you know, I think they don't have any unrealistic expectations. So
yeah, I think to note, I mean, we're not looking to like save money to buy new clothes, because as you can see, I'm not the fashionable one. Like we would actually, you know, the reason we're like, well, if there's hookups, we could actually use the money that we had set aside for that into the construction of the, we're just going to put that money straight into the rating system, right?
Yeah,
Because the more
great.
we can put that, the better.
Thank you.
And we're actually trying to protect the town property from sliding onto the pool, which is a liability issue, as you know. It's basically you're not getting paid to get paid, because we're going to be putting in the money and time. So
Great, thank you. Now, Sage, is that you got a friend? Yes, Sage, please.
Yes, I just want to mention again that that site does not qualify to have the fees waived. In section 1351B of our town code, the second paragraph gives you the definition of a structure. Your pool is not a structure. Your pool house is not a structure. It is not meant to shelter any form of human activity. The pool house shelters a pump for a swimming pool. A swimming pool does not shelter a human being. So I do not believe that you qualify to have your fees waived for hookup to water and sewer.
I'm not here to argue the point. I'm just saying that we have a letter from 2019 for the hookup was waived for the previous owner, and I don't know if Frank had a different direction of why that hookup was waived, but as new owners, we're just taking on board what was listed and what was, what we have in hand. So it's not a historic document. It's from less than, a year ago. If it turns out that he was given that waiver in a way that was not right, then that is an issue with the town, not with the new owners. However, if we end up having to pay for the hookup, so be it. It just means we won't be putting as much money into the retaining system that's going to protect the town.
Thank you.
Okay.
Now, Mandy, do you have your hand up again, or is that still up from before?
Sorry, that's still up from before.
Great. Candace, any other folks?
There's no other hands up that I see, no.
Okay, and council members, any other further discussion? I don't know what we were, this was an informational meeting. I didn't expect to have a vote or on outcomes. John, anything from your perspective in closing?
There we go. Sorry, I've been listening in the background. No, nothing to add.
Okay.
Be happy to sit down with Cameron, Bethany, and if we want to have a couple of council members or P&Z members kind of work through some of these issues. I think that's a good idea. I think they have some marching orders in terms of their challenges. There's nothing, I think there's nothing new today that they weren't already aware of. I will forward that letter that I believe Cameron referenced a few minutes ago. I was just in the process of forwarding that to council if anybody wants to see that regarding the waiving of the sewer hookups.
Thank you. And
for the opportunity to hear what you guys have in mind, we really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great. And I think the open communication is great. I'm really thankful for all of you to really share these important points. And let's see if we can move forward successfully with this and make it work. It'd be exciting if we can do it. And we'll just have to see how real it is, from everyone's perspective. If there's no other dialogue or discussion, can we get a motion to adjourn?
We have another item on the agenda, Mayor.
Well, and I apologize. I never gotten it. That's my fault. My bad. I apologize, Councilman.
Code enforcement.
Yes? Oh, good.
And Alan is going to be joining us for this.
Okay.
He's on his way back up from the number one, so.
Okay. Thank you.
Did anybody have any questions before we just go on to mute? I just want to say thank you to everybody. But if there's any last questions, you can.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Cameron. Thank you, Bethany.
Thank you.
Looking forward to stage one, which is becoming Jerome's next 2 residents.
Yes,
So,
we love it. Love it. I'll host the wine tasting.
Great. Socially distanced wine tasting.
Yes. All right. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. Looking forward. All right. There you go. All right, John, you want to?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Mayor. If you'd like to open up, we can start discussing the next item on the agenda, if that's appropriate.
Let's go to the next item, please.
So John Knight, zoning administrator, just really briefly, I don't want to take a whole lot of time today and talk about code enforcement, but this is going to honestly be an ongoing discussion. I'm sure it will be has been ongoing discussion for many years and will continue to be. But there were a couple items that we were hoping to get a little bit of clarification on from the council regarding code enforcement. I think we did get some good direction last time. I was hoping to come back in February with a little more detail, but I thought we'd take the opportunity and just add this to the agenda for a brief discussion, and then I can be a little more prepared when we meet again in February. We did talk about a little bit about process. I had an opportunity to talk a little bit with Councilmember Moore about process as well. And I had an opportunity, since I talked to Councilmember Moore, to meet with Alan, Chief Muma, and talk about how we're going to handle this with the record management system. And I'm hoping that he's going to join us shortly and can, I'm not sure if he's on the call yet. I'm on speaker view. I'm hoping he can join us shortly and talk a little bit more about how that will work. Our intention is to do a little bit of training this week or next week on the getting things set up so we can use, so all of us can use the record management system, not just the police department. And they can set it up so that we have access to only, of course, the parts that we need for code enforcement. So I think there's a good opportunity there. So I wanted to talk to the council about that a little bit. Actually, going backwards to process, originally mentioned, I believe that a lot of the way code enforcement is done in jurisdictions is they operate primarily on a complaint basis. And I think the item that or the way we described it is, it means you have to walk around or drive around with blinders on and not notice certain other things that are a problem, and we're not going to do that. I think we agreed. So I just wanted to follow up with that if staff does come across something in the regular course of our driving around, walking around, doing inspections, of course, we're gonna bring it up and have it. And then Alan, Chief Muma, can talk a little bit about the record management system. The last item we were hoping to get some input on, I think we had some consensus that if people did start work without permits, that we would, currently we double the building permit fees. But if you're building a small item, doing a little project, your building permit fee might only be $50 or $100. That in addition to doubling, which isn't a huge barrier for most people. In addition to doing that, however, we talked about the possibility of doubling our design review fees and our site plan fees. So I wanted to get a little input on that from the council, and we can come back in February with some more detail and see if there are any other questions, comments, concerns about code enforcement in terms of how we want to handle that.
Mayor Jane has her hand up and Mandy has her hand up.
Okay, Jane, and then we'll get to Mandy.
One of the things that I had mentioned at a previous meeting when we were talking about this, and I know there have been problems in the past with possibly record keeping, but when somebody calls to complain about somebody, I don't think it needs to go immediately to the police department. When somebody calls into town hall to complain about somebody doing some project, it seems to me that the best thing to do would be just to check it out first. And then if there are further issues with it, then it could be recorded with the police department. But I would like us to stay neighborly and not immediately have this be on file with the police department.
Thank you, Jane. Mandy?
Thank you, Dr. Mayor. As far as fees go, like, I get that there's some things that are overlooked or whatever, and people are unaware, but I think that there needs to be some sort of progressive, like for chronic offenders, there needs to be some drastic increases when we get into like multiple offenses by the same property owner or same person, to prohibit the procedure. You know, the first time, doubling the building permit fees, I'd even like to see like some sort of a code, and maybe a code enforcement fee that's added to their design review or whatever if they start work without permits. But once we get into second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, I know there's I know that sounds extensive, but there are people who have been doing it for years. I'd like to see those fees become a point where it's cost prohibitive. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Question?
Sage has her hand up and Alex has her hand up.
Sage and Alex, please.
So I don't see Alan on here, and I thought he was going to be in here
He is,
today.
he says he's on his way in, so.
Okay. So the RMS, I just want to I've talked to Alan about it a little bit, and it's not so much that the call goes straight to the police, it's that it's a tracking device. It's a software that he can share with town employees to have on their computers so that we can track if there's a complaint. The person's name doesn't have to be in there that complained. It doesn't have to be, it's just a matter of tracking so that we can see if we have those repeat offenders. If there's a complaint made, now there's a history for the next complaint. If there's a next complaint, then obviously they repeat doing these things. So I think it might be a good way to get some enforcement going. It's not necessarily that it's going to be a criminal offense or that the cops are going to be dealing with it. It's a program that he is willing to extend to the rest of town staff so that we can utilize it without spending a bunch of money on a new program. It can be used to where public can only see certain things. So in Alan can make that happen so that like you only see the address and you only see what the complaint was. You don't see who's working on it. You don't see who complained about it. I mean, he can do all different kinds of fields. It's a lot like a bookkeeping thing where you can keep information out, but let some things be seen in different reports. And I think it's a tool for tracking so that we can see it when we have repeat offenders. Thank you.
No, thanks, Sage. Alex?
Um,
And then I think Alan's there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, Alan is here.
Great. Hi,
And I
Chief.
just wanted to say I agreed with Jane on her point, and thank you for the clarification on that, Sage. So to be neighborly is very nice. I also agree with Mandy about repeat offenders. If you just keep doing it, then, and the other thing is if it's a huge project or some tiny little thing, it should have merit on repeat offenders and how big the scope of the problem is. And to be neighborly in a town like this, it's really, really hard to call the cops on your neighbors. I suggest you talk to them first before you do that usually. So thank you for listening.
No, good points, all good points. And Candace, I don't know, Val, if the chief had any comments or just.
I'm here for any questions.
Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So I
Thank
think Sage did a good job explaining it.
Yes, that's great.
Literally all it is sharing the software that I use, which is a database management program.
I think it's a great idea.
I spoke to the company that produced it. I've been with it for 21.5 years. I can share only those resources that I want. But what's nice is the reporting, the tracking, if a situation should come to fruition where it has to go to court, it can be tracked, the reports can be supervised. So it's not a matter of the police supervising anything. It's a matter of allowing a program to be used so that we can track these problems that allegedly occur that, I gotta be honest, so far up here through the zoning administrators I've been through, there's stuff missing all over the place. And I can assure you there's 21.5 years of records in my system.
Wow.
So.
Great. Thank you, Chief. Thank you. Does anyone have any further questions or comments? Are we going to, John, are we going to take any action on this, or was this just discussion and direction?
No action needed today. I think we have enough direction. I'm really pleased that Chief Muma is able to join us and talk a little bit about the record management system.
Sounds great.
The way we want to set this up is whether Kristen takes a call, or Rosa, or Melanie, or me, or somebody in the police department. We want to be able to take that call, write down all the pertinent information, enter it into the system. So if we keep getting the so-called serial offenders, whether it's a noise complaint or parking or doing work without permit, we should be able to look back over the last 5, 10, even 20 years if we keep this system in place. And I think that'll be really useful if we ever do get to the point where we have to take somebody to court. And we can also document all the, I'll work with Chief Moomin to figure out how this works, but we'll also be able to document whatever actions we took. And really important, we'll be able to follow up with the complainant to make sure that they know that we've taken care of it and that's been
And we're monitoring it. Yes.
Yeah, that we're watching it. In some cases, all it is monitoring.
Yeah.
You do get some calls and complaints about things that don't require any action immediately. But if we do get a lot of potential concerns, we can at least log those. And I've been passing those concerns on to people, even if it's not a violation. I've been just letting them know that we've been getting some complaints, but and to just be aware of that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any other further discussion, questions? Candace, anything else we need to address? No? Do you think, have we covered everything that people wanted to discuss this afternoon, please?
I have one last question, Jack.
Yes, please, Alex.
Are we working on that complaint form? Because that's what we had talked about, that there was going to be some sort of complaint form.
John Knight, again, we have the complaint form. Kristen helped me. In fact, she ended up doing most of it. We gathered the complaint forms from various jurisdictions locally here in the Verde Valley. And we took the pieces that we liked, and we actually have had a complaint form in the past. And we've started using that complaint form as we have complaints come in. So if you're curious, I'd be happy to share that. We want to play with it for a little while, and then I'd like to post it on our website once we decide that it's in pretty good shape. If you'd like, I'll forward that to everyone on the council. And
thank
we'd
you.
love to hear your comments.
Thanks, Alex.
Perfect. And then my follow-up was going to be, then we would all look at it as a council at our next meeting. If you send it out to us, we can look at it, nitpick it, and then we'd have it at our next council meeting to approve it so that we can get it in place as quick as possible.
I'd be happy to send it out. I don't know that we need, it's more of an administrative form, but we would love to have your input and comments and ideas.
Yeah, comments.
So.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex. Candace, anything else we need to cover?
No, but Sage has her hand up.
Oh, really? Sorry, Sage. There you are. Sorry.
I just wanted to ask if everyone is okay with using the RMS, because I know that Jane had a couple concerns about it, and Alex maybe did too. But the point of this is so that we can either agree to use it or disagree to use it, so that we can figure out where we're going to go from here. So I would like to know how the rest of the council feels if we should go ahead and have Alan and John finish working on this and implement using the RMS system to track complaints.
I agree that we should. I had apprehension at first, but after you explained what it was, again, we just need to try our best to be neighborly. But I think we need to go forward with this because we can't be so neighborly that we get walked all over.
Yes.
Thank you for listening.
Very good.
I'm
Thanks.
good with that too. Thank you.
I'm good with it as well. And I think it gives you the facts. That way you've got a file of the information, period, and I think that's good. Jane, I don't know if you had a comment on that at all. Are you okay with that?
I guess my question would be, so in other words, if somebody calls town hall, Kristen takes the call and they say, oh, there's major construction going on down the street from me, that immediately gets put into this system. Is that how this works?
Yes.
Okay.
But again, remember that, sorry.
No, go ahead, Chief.
Well, and then anyone.
It is a separate system, even though all the addresses and names I can share with John, just so it doesn't share the history of those names. And it'll only share the history of those addresses as far as I want it. But it allows John to go back in there, pull an address up, and he can see what happened there over the course of 10 years, like you said, or 5 years, once we establish it. He can't go back in there and go, hey, I see there was a domestic there 5 years ago. That's not his access. His access is limited to zoning and code enforcement. I can build it that way. I set the
Parameters.
we'll call them security levels or access levels, for lack of a better word. I can set it any way we need it to be done. So it's a very flexible program. I mean, Caltrans even uses it. That's the biggest customer of the RMS system that I use, is California Department of Transportation.
Wow.
So they have people from 5 users up to 5,000. I personally know the owner of this company. He was a little guy from Vermont. He's not one of the giants. And he was really excited about our ability to be able to use it even further. So I think it's a great opportunity, and it'll allow us to keep track of this stuff. So in 20 years, you can look at it just like you could look up a crime from the PD. You could look and see, hey, this was a building issue or a zoning issue or a noise issue or a parking issue. It's there. And so we can figure out what's going on. And John can report from it. He can actually print out a report that says, hey, I had 23 different zoning complaints or whatever, and this is how they were taken care of. So it'll provide something for a council as well.
Great, great resource. I think it's really a great resource. Thank you. Any other discussion, please? Hearing none, I would certainly entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll
Motion
make
to
a
adjourn.
motion that
Thank
we
you,
adjourn.
Kate.
I'll
And
second that.
Thank you, Alex. Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. All right, we are adjourned at 2:42. Thank you all very much. Very good discussions today. Thank you. Everyone did great.
Thanks,
Appreciate it.
everybody. Have a
Bye-bye.
great
Stay
afternoon.
safe. All the best.